About a year ago, you might have remembered that I talked about a reluctance to finish the Mass Effect trilogy. Talked
Hmm.
about
I remember that video did fairly well.
a lot of people had stuff to say about that. And after I did that, and eventually I did finish Mass Effect 3, I did go through it, got to the end again, remembered that ending. Um, Something that came up this year was maybe I should go back and play Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so actually I wanted to discuss what I'm calling the very obvious reluctance to finish Mass Effect Andromeda. Because the thing about it is, back when it came out, it was 2017 when that game came out, I didn't think it was bad. I really didn't think that it was very bad. And it was still Mass Effect for me, and it still had the feeling of being in the Mass Effect universe, but they had definitely changed up the formula to it quite a bit. If anyone is familiar, basically in the original Mass Effect trilogy, there was exploration elements and different planets you could explore and stuff, but when it came down to the missions itself, it was kind of linear. Those mission structures were kind of linear, all very cover-based. When they did Andromeda, basically you ended up with planets that were more like sandboxes that you were supposed to explore, and so you have to think of it in those terms of like an actual sandbox game where there's a bunch of different activities to do around there in order to create the conceit is that you're getting planetary preparation so that they can be colonized for the different races that are trying to get a new homeworld in the Andromeda galaxy. So you have to get viability by going around discovering these ancient ruins and everything. And so I booted up, and I realized, like, okay, well, it looks good, and, it plays okay, and I remember this storyline, and something that eventually, though, happens to me is, while the open world thing isn't a deal breaker for me, I think what I found was that it didn't feel like what I expect Mass Effect to be. So while I was able to finish it the first time and I played through to the end and I didn't have any problems, this time I didn't really get nearly as far before I was like, oh, the luster has gone off of that one for me a bit. Because the open world elements, while they're not a bad thing, don't really scream Mass Effect to me. They don't work for that series and how the original trilogy built narratives and storylines and character development in the same way. I know. Have you played any of the Mass Effect games? Or
Yes, but not really. I don't remember if it was the first or second one I tried, but it didn't really gel with how the game felt.
And it's tricky because every one of those games has different kinds of mechanics about like how they do the combat. Because like in the first one, it's very much percentage based on being able to hit, and then by the second one, it's much more straight up cover based shooting. You know, they do a lot of different mechanics. But in Andromeda, it kind of eschews all of that to do that open world setup. Where you're also jetting around the place and you can jump. There's more platforming elements to it, and it kind of tries to take it out of that cover-based thing and also just have not nearly as linear a framework, which would normally be a great thing, but in this particular context also just kind of makes it scattered. Hey, here's like 5 different points of interest on the map. You can go to all of them. And what it reminded me of was, in the first game, there's the sections with the Mako where you can go to like this planet and you can set the Mako down onto that planet. And there's going to be like 3 things to uncover that are like, ancient artifacts and stuff that you can find, things like that. You might have encountered that in the first game. They were the worst part of that game. They were the worst part because it was so boring. You just like went to the planet, there's a few things to do, and Andromeda felt like it's that, but, like, let's just make a lot more of it. Let's do a bigger piece of that. And so it focuses more on the actual, like, map of doing that bigger sandbox than the character development, or the relationship building, or the narrative
So they tried to go
structure.
Ubisoft model.
Yeah, and the thing is that there's Ubisoft games that this would work for, but Mass Effect is not that series. Like, it's a different thing that you're looking for. No Man's Sky has this model, but the thing about it is that Mass Effect is built for that, and I expect it from from No Man's Sky. I now have a big reluctance to finish Mass Effect Andromeda, and I probably won't this time. To go back to it, so...
I remember people saying it was bad.
Yeah, and I thought that was odd because I thought that it was fun enough, and it can be fun enough, but it definitely is built differently. When you have those bigger open worlds where it's just asking you to go and do a bunch of things, you don't have a narrative focus of like how they ran those linear things where it felt like the narrative is just taking you all the way through the storyline. Like, in the first Mass Effect game, you meet, like, all of your characters in a very logical fashion because of the mission that you're on. You know, you meet Garrus because you have to go to C-Sec to find out what happened with, like, Saren, and that leads you to, like, this renegade that's going to help you get to the underworld, and that's Rex. Like, you know, all of these characters you naturally come across, and a lot of the characters that you meet in Andromeda are like, PB just like runs up to you and tackles you at some point because she's looking at ruins, and it's like, that's how you meet PB in the game. And like, do I care about any of these characters? Not really. You know, Liam and Cora are not the same as like Ashley and Caden, and I don't care about them as much. Having that linear framework is really much easier to uncover the storyline because it's leading you through it in a curated fashion. And this is definitely not curated. Anyway, yeah, Andromeda. It's a Mass Effect game. If anyone remembers Andromeda, feel free to tell me in the comments down below. But yeah, it's one of those cases where I have less of an interest in it now than I did originally. It has not aged well in my mind, at least.